logging in now. It's always good. Stream appears to be working. Going live. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Sorry who just heard me and Stephen talking in the background. There was a timer on it that counted down while we weren't looking. So you probably can't see me. There we go. So good afternoon, everyone who's watching this. And this is our Q&A or tete-a-tete all about property CRMs. So just before we get started, we'll quickly introduce or let Stephen introduce himself. So Stephen, do you want to say a little bit about who you are, what you do and why you're here?
Sure. So my name's Stephen Lai. I specialize in systems, particularly property systems, but I'm also a property investor as well. I thought I'd come in and lean in and support my very good friend, Steve, so that we could have a really catchy title, Steve and Steve Go Live. I actually met Steve at the start of our journey. I think it was over actually a fried breakfast. We got to know each other, discovered he was an out of the closet systems geek, of which I was as well. And I think we got on swimmingly well. We stayed friends ever since then. But in this particular session, I can share with you either great insights and in-depth knowledge on 80s pop trivia, too much kiddies programs, but I think the area of expertise today is around CRMs and how CRMs can really transform your property business. So hopefully that's a bit of an intro, Steve.
Cool. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, it's been a good journey working together alongside each other, should I say, for the past few years. So brilliant. I'm going to kick off with probably one question that some people might already know the answer to, but others don't. And that's just to start with, what is a CRM? Really simply, please, Steve, for the likes of me in the room.
Well, first of all, CRM stands for customer relationship management. And of course, if you're in property, you might not have any customers. So often I refer to it as contact relationship management. But guess what? You're going to have a whole bunch of contacts, whether they're going to be on your phone, whether they're going to be on your computer or in that dusty shoebox full of business cards. But it's really, how do you transform all of those moving pieces into a system that can really transform your business? So hopefully that gives you some sort of idea or some context of what a CRM actually is.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I have used CRMs. When we first met, I was actually in the process, which is how this conversation started between us. So I said it was a fair few years ago now, and it was all about choosing the right CRM and figuring out what one was. So you've explained that pretty well. But some of the challenge that I was having at the time, just to put it into context, is I was trying to do property deals. So I was at the time sourcing property, and that means looking on the internet, finding properties which may be for sale, and then working out if they're actually worth purchasing, if they're going to be of value to me. I was then having to deal with lots of different types of people, so surveyors and I've not done property for a while, it's not off the top of my head. For example, estate agents and letting agents and everybody else around that property deal. And also, if you've got investors involved, you need to have them linked in, and then anybody else that's basically pinging information about a particular deal. And what I was doing at the time was basically running that all through my email account. And I have a terrible memory at best, which is why I love systems, and that's why my passion is all about systems, because I just forget everything. And so what was happening was I was basically running a bit of a shambles, and I was trying to figure out a way to sort of organize all that data that was in spreadsheets and in email inboxes, and it was just making my life a total misery. And I was starting to feel, as I had done a few times in the past, that I wasn't cut out to be a business person, because surely it couldn't be this hard. And that was when we started that conversation. So you obviously speak to people about CRMs quite regularly. Are those sorts of overwhelmed, disorganized, is that the feeling that a lot of people have, and why they come to someone like you looking for advice, and what do you tell them?
That's really, first of all, that's a great, you painted a great picture there. And often, whether people who come and have a chat with us are as messy as you have painted it, or maybe even messier, some of the things what I thought would be useful to actually pick out through what your conversation, what you just shared there. So one of the common things is, what do you do over and over and over again? And I think what you mentioned is that you are basically finding deals. So if that is something that is eating up a shed load of your time every day, then as we are systems people, anything that can streamline that, because if you can remove an extra step so you don't compound it over time, it's going to save you time. And we love saving time. I think you and I, we have that that shared belief here is time is definitely the most valuable commodity. Then the other things you mentioned is that there's lots of stuff that are moving around. So there are people, you mentioned there are estate agents, there's the investor, there is maybe the planning consultant, the architect. These are all these people that are involved in this discussion, this deal that you're talking about. And then you're moving it across from this stage here to that stage there. And it's really difficult because it's complex, and there's a timeline, and the thing is that timeline can really stretch out. So you're trying to juggle all of this into around in your head. And let's not forget the things that you mentioned around emails and these things that you're trying to maybe analyze using spreadsheets. And let's not forget those pictures and videos. So when you throw all of that into the mix, you've got lots of stuff that are happening on a timeline which is quite long, it's complex, and the people you're chatting to. And here is a really good question to ask you. Do you know, in that situation where you're trying to manage all of that, where do you capture the conversations that you're having? Like this conversation I'm having with you now, you know, I remember where we met, whether you liked like 2 sausages or 3 sausages, or you like how you like your eggs. These details, they really matter, but you've got nowhere to capture that in your system. So if you're having conversations on telephone, where do you capture that? And most people tend to basically throw that into a spreadsheet. Now, spreadsheets are great. They're great for analyzing numbers. But the thing is, when you're trying to make it do a lot of things, they may not be the best tools for it. So the things that you shared there are very, very common challenges that people come to you know, when they chat to us. But the problem is they don't really know what is maybe a better alternative. They know there's one that must be something out there that can help them, but they don't know exactly what it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. That's what I felt. I knew that other people in business weren't in such a mess as I was, and there must have been a way. And thankfully, you know, these years later, I have figured a lot of this stuff out. And so yeah, but I'm sure other people maybe listening to this now or on the repeat will probably be in that same situation. And just to note, if you're watching this live, and there are quite a few people watching this live already at the moment, I should say, ping your questions into the group. This is a live session. It's a Q&A. The reason for doing it live is so you can ask questions as we go. So if anything comes up, you want to ask Stephen or you want to ask myself, whether it's about CRM systems or the linking those two together, it's all fair game. Just please ping your questions in and we'll do our best to go through them all. Good. Okay, cool. So that sort of explains some of the challenges that myself I was having, and I'm sure other people do. But what about the next big question on probably everyone's mind? Which CRM should I use? Which is the best CRM for property investing? This is a property specific session, so I can say that, because this isn't obviously a property specific group, but this is a property specific session. At the time I was looking at CRMs with you many years ago, I actually use a different CRM now than probably the one you're going to recommend. But I have a very different goal with my CRM. So I guess that's probably a good question. So yeah, how do you choose which is the right CRM? And then what would you suggest or recommend for property?
Well, first of all, there's quite a few questions amongst your question there. So
I'll let you just go.
Yeah, I'll address the big elephant in the room. Yeah. Okay. So the first question you asked is, what's the best CRM? What's the best free CRM? What's the best CRM for property? What CRM are you using? We have so many different flavors of CRMs, actually. And often when people ask that question, you get a load of sort of names of CRMs thrown back at you, whether it's called ABC or XYZ. But have you noticed, unless you live in CRM land, like what we do, it doesn't really make any sense. So if I basically start throwing names at you, what do they mean? They're just names. So often we think that is actually the wrong question. The question you should be asking is, how can a CRM really transform my business? In this case, a property business. So if you approach it in that sense, rather than just saying, well, you should use ABC or XYZ, and that's when people are thinking, well, actually, what is it that I'm basically doing on a daily basis that's eating up a shed load of time? And it might be, coming back to what you were saying, finding either deals or managing your deals, as in what you were doing earlier on with deal sourcing or finding that initial deal, or it might be going networking to find money to secure those amazing deals that you're finding. So if those two things are the things that you do on a daily basis, and it might be eating up 30, 40, 50% of your time, how could you streamline that? And one of the great things about the CRM is that you can use what's known as a pipeline. Now, what the heck is a pipeline? A pipeline is a workflow.
What's a workflow?
That changes a work process, a thing that you do over and over again. Yeah. And it's always broken into a number of stages, and under each stage there's a set of activities. And the value of that is by having this pipeline, this workflow, this process, whichever way you like to call it, by following the activities in each stage, you know what's coming down the line. It removes the risk or eliminates the risk of any important things falling through the cracks. The wonderful thing is just follow the pipeline. So therefore you take the reliance on this wonderful brain of yours because it's doing lots of stuff at the moment. So that would be particularly useful. The question is, does the CRM that you choose, does it work in that way? And is it useful if you're either a visual person or maybe you just want to keep it really simple? How does that all going to work? So when we talk about what CRMs do you actually suggest, rather than I just give you a name of a CRM, what I might suggest would be is in a daily basis, what do you do? And let's maybe put on a typical profile of a property investor. They may not be chained to the desk like maybe you and I are doing more now, Steve, although in the past you were out looking for these deals. So you're in the house, you're in the office, but you're also out and about. So therefore, would it be useful to have your CRM not only on your desktop, but also on your mobile or on your tablet? That might be a essential feature for you because your life doesn't resolve around staying around your desk. That's one. Secondly, do you tend to find, I'll just quickly grab one of these because it's nearby. Do you have a pack of these? These are typically those business cards, yeah? So, you know, the people that you go networking to go and meet, do you walk home with a pack of these and then it just stay there? Or if you happen to have a built-in scanner on your mobile phone, you could scan it in and it goes straight into your CRM. I think that might be super useful. It could save you a shed load of time, yeah? And then in terms of these pipelines, the things that you're doing every single day, the low-hanging fruit, if it could really help you streamline that, would that then be useful? And only until you have an understanding of what you need it to actually do, it's very hard to actually say you should use this one or you should use that one. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I think that maybe people listening, because it's a property specific one, you can actually be quite specific because we know, as both of us are property investors, although you are more active than I am these days, that actually what I found was when I was looking, and again, back to the conversations we originally had, was the problem is there's so many CRMs out there, and some of the ones I looked at the time, HubSpot, ActiveCampaign, Infusionsoft, Zoho, to name a few, and all of those were brilliant CRMs, as in customer relationship management tools, if you were mainly in marketing, sales, that sort of process. That's what most CRMs are built for. So I think that what I sort of came to the conclusion was that most CRMs are built for one purpose, and that is for a sales pipeline, in that you're basically getting leads, and then those leads are then getting scored to become hot buyers for your product. That doesn't work for property. Like that, there's no point in that, because you're not, unless okay, maybe for the investors sort of track, but actually the work, most of the time I spent as a property investor was sourcing. And I think that's for me was the trying to get the silver bullet to kill that problem was the key. And I know from conversations with you that you've found a pretty cool solution to this, and I think we both arrived at the same decision, if I remember, at the time on a particular CRM. So I'm going to force you to give a name because I know you know one.
Okay, so actually, Steve, there are many CRMs out there. There's many great CRMs out there. The one that we use, because I think you're forcing my hand, is I use Insightly CRM. Okay, but let me share with maybe the community, how do we didn't basically put a finger in the air and say, let's go and use the CRM. This is how we do it, a bit more methodically or a bit more thoroughly. And I have to thank my business partner, Chris Laslett, which I'm going to give you a bit of a name drop out there, who's watching today. Chris had the unfortunate task, because I gave him the task, because he's very good at this, of going through more than a dozen micro CRMs, or CRMs designed for startup to scale up businesses. And what he did was he used a scorecard to work out all the essential features and nice to have features. And then once he's worked it all out, then at this point, could you compare apples and oranges? Because all of the other different CRMs, they have certain things in them. It's very hard to level the playing field. And by scoring it this way, you can work out what it is that you need, bang for your buck. And we found of the CRMs that we were looking at for the micro, or I would say startup to scale up businesses, which were you and I at that particular stage.
So sort of just to context, so 0 to 10 employees mean micro businesses 0 to 10 employees, just for context.
So I'll make it even less than that. I would say from either a solopreneur to maybe 3 to 5 people. So really anything above that.
A mini micro.
A mini micro, I like that, a mini micro. So we basically scored it, and Insightly came out in terms of its functionality, what you need to do with it. Now, the other thing which I think you touched upon last week, which is a really great sort of point, was you use now, I think in terms of your business, you use quite a powerful piece of software called HubSpot. Now, we're very familiar with HubSpot, but one of the things about HubSpot, and maybe I borrow an analogy, okay, is when you're getting started, you have all these wonderful toys, but these toys are expensive. And you can spend all your money on these toys. And if I said to you, you've got a solution, but it's going to cost you £10,000. Well, as a micro business, that £10,000 is maybe prohibitive. So even though you've got the right one for you, or more than that, yeah, if everything being equal, if I just turned up and I said to you, your solution is going to cost you £12,000 or £10,000, could you afford that? If the answer is no, well, guess what? You're still stuck because you haven't got a solution. What we've looked at are lots of those considerations: affordability, the speed of delivering that process into your business. So people just think about the cost of the software, as in licenses, but there's a few things you haven't maybe considered, which is you've got to learn how to use it, you've got to configure it, you've got to test it, and then afterwards, when you start using it, you're most likely to get stuck. And if you do get stuck, who are you going to call? You might call Ghostbusters if there's a spooky problem in your house. But if you're stuck on CRMs, who do you reach out to? Because you need to get unstuck. So all of these things you need to sort of consider. I hope that was useful, Steve.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've hit a really good point there. It's something that I really try to drive with our clients about the total cost of ownership of any piece of software. And the subscription cost is obviously significant in those early days. I like software with a very cheap or free entry point, which means you can get in and really test it out and start using it in your business when you've got no sales coming in, and it's just a stress if you haven't to pay out subscriptions. But the key things is, and I'm just going to really reiterate these because they're so important, is that the ultimate cost of something, you should see direct benefits into your company for that bit of software. So the cost shouldn't be off-putting as long as there's a easy step ways into that escalated cost. So if you see, maybe it is, HubSpot, if there was a cheap version you could get in, and there's a free version of HubSpot you can start trying out. And then as your business grows, the cost goes up in line with your profits. It doesn't matter. You can absorb that cost. That's one issue. So the cost is, it's important in the very beginning, but it shouldn't be an issue going forward. The biggest issue is, in my opinion, the setup, admin, and maintenance. Because a lot of our clients come to us from a systems point of view, and they're asking, which system do I use? And the simple answer is, you want something that is so easy to use, you don't ever need to get somebody from the company to show you how to use it. And ideally, that you can then delegate the responsibility of all the admin to somebody else to do. So Microsoft versus Google is a great comparison. Both do pretty much the same thing: business grade storage, email, and Office suites. One of them is actually free for everything until you need to upgrade. Google. Microsoft is you have to pay from the beginning. Even if they were exactly the same price all the way through, there is a clear winner, and that is Google. I've got a degree in computing and I'm pretty tech savvy, yet I was actually going down the route of employing a Microsoft certified professional just to maintain my my emails and my files online. Since I moved, and actually it was a recommendation by you, Stephen, 5 years ago.
I was wondering whether you're going to reference that.
I migrated to Google. And since then, my non-techie virtual assistant, who I basically trained up by saying, go and watch that video that Google made on how to do this. And she now manages all of our Google Suite, G Suite side of things without my involvement. And we've not had any problems ever since. And it's the same thing for any software. So it's a really important point. The cost is actually, the time cost is more important than the actual cost once you get over that initial painful part when you're starting a business, you've got no money. So you need an easy entry, but then don't worry about the eventual cost because it should be absorbed. The more important thing, in my opinion, like you said, is the time.
So I think you've also mentioned a couple of really important points there. Actually, with any piece of software, isn't there a number of distinct steps or stages? First of all, you've got to configure it or get it off your plate, get someone to go and configure it for you. Now it's been configured, you've got to learn how to use that. So you need to do the knowledge transfer from their head into your head, or in this case, I think you mentioned with your team that you have step-by-step videos. Because the beauty of having step-by-step videos is you don't have to teach them, you just have to watch the videos. And it also has an additional benefit that if they are going to be scaling their team, because no one wants to do all of that work themselves later on, instead of the business owner having to then teach their staff, you just send them over to the videos and the staff can just watch the videos. So it takes the pressure off of the business owner. So configure it, learn how to use it. But also there's the other piece, have you noticed with maybe some of the customers you work with, is sometimes if you give the knowledge and you give the system without a success plan, and they've got to use it, because if they don't want to use it, then they're also going to fail that way. So it's important that there's accountability as well. And the third part, the piece that I think you've mentioned, is that, have you noticed that, I mean, you and I, we've been friends now for about 2-3 years now, and often when we get stuck, you ask me a question, Stephen, what's this one here, and you may disagree with me, or you may think actually that's a different way of doing it, but it's always helping each other get unstuck. It's that support part of it. So those 4 things, which is basically get it configured, learn how to use it, have an accountability way of making sure you leveraging it to its full value. And I think this is the piece that you mentioned, is a return on investment. Is whether it's to do with money or whether it's to do with time, when can you start putting that value back into your business? And of course, you are likely to get stuck. And if you do, how are you going to get unstuck? So we just try to keep it really, really simple. The other thing you mentioned about was the with CRMs, this is a bit different, because just like you, I'm a Chinaman. I don't really want to pay anything full price if I can, yeah? But there's a thing about starting free.
I'm not a Chinaman, by the way.
He's not Chinaman. He's okay? Brother from another mother. Okay, so the other thing I was going to say was, with software, there's the free version, and there's maybe when you do a trial, you have a trial version. But there is something quite special with CRMs here. If you go down the free route, which is what most people do, all the useful stuff is removed. So therefore, now you're trying to save a couple of dollars or a couple of pounds per month, trying to build a solution with all the useful stuff that is actually in the paid version removed. That is not what I would suggest you go and do, but many people start that way, which is where is the first pitfall or the first hurdle. The second thing is, if you use maybe the paid for version, the problem you have is that, have you noticed they give you a trial of about 14 days, and just when you make sense of it, it locks up again. So you have to either re-download it all over again and set it all up, or what most people have actually said to me, Steve, is they tried one, they've downloaded it, reached 14 days, didn't work, so they try and download another one and another one. So they're trying to download their way to the answer. But as you know, it's like a mobile phone. When you first use it, it's empty. You need to fill it with the stuff that is useful for you. And your mobile phone will be different from my mobile phone. It's just about making sure all of the tools play nicely together.
Yeah, stick at it. I think it's one of the biggest lessons I've ever learned in medicine. I used to be a doctor. In business is don't stick at medicine. This is a bad example because I quit that one. In business, if you stick at one thing, whatever it is, software, business idea, niche market, whatever it is, and this goes exactly with apps, is it takes time to become an expert. There's that adage that's kicked around, it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert at anything. So you've got to put your time in. Your company has to put in the time, whether it's you personally or everyone on your team. Everybody has to get on board to be an expert at your suite of apps. And that's crucial, is choosing the right software and then sticking with it. And to be honest, even if you chose the worst piece of software, not the worst, a not perfect piece of software, if you just stuck at it, you'd be 10 times better off than if you kept chopping and changing. So totally agree. Right, I've got a couple of things I wanted to ask you actually, which I've made a note of. So we've been waffling on for a while, so let's get down to it. When should somebody start looking at choosing a CRM for property? And is there any other pointers about that you can give people that are unsure if now is the right time?
Okay, that's a great question. It's a common question that's asked. People, I'll basically add a little bit more. They often say, should I wait until I get some deals before I systemize, or should I systemize now before I get some deals? And I think this is actually a question that you and I maybe had chewed on maybe about 3 years ago. And I think one of the analogies that you gave, Steve, which is one that I'll replay here, is imagine anything you do in your business is like a door. At this moment, you don't have a lot of deals because everything's closed, which means that you've got more time to basically do and tinker with the stuff in the background. But as soon as deals start coming down the line and you start opening that door and it starts coming down the conveyor belt, it can very easily overwhelm you. So I remember that, I think not those exact words, but that was the sort of the analogy that you gave me, even when I started my my business. And so what I would share with you is the following: is it really depends. But if I gave you maybe a good litmus test, which is, if I was to ask you as a business, or whether you're in property or any business actually, could you walk me through start to finish what actually happens? So if you start here and you have to walk me through the steps and you get to here on the finish line, can you walk me through those steps? Now, if you can, you can get systemized. If you can't, then there's something that's missing here. You either somebody already knows the steps because they've done it many, many times before, so they can fill in the blanks that you don't know. So that might be useful if you've got a specialist or a guide. But what I would say is, I've noticed from our customers 2 things. Those who have a system, and it reference back to what you were saying. Those who have got a system have something to follow rather than a blank page, and they keep doing it over and over again. And if you keep doing it over and over again, it's a bit like, this is where I segue into my 80s theme that I rock in my business. I have a great fondness. One of my favorite movies is The Karate Kid. Now, in The Karate Kid, Daniel's son is being taught how to wipe on, wipe off. And he, like many people, they get distracted. It's shiny coin syndrome. He wants to learn lots of moves. But Mr. Miyagi, he keeps him centered. Wipe on, wipe off, wipe on, wipe off. And you do it over and over again, because if you do it over and over again, you're going to get familiar with that. You're going to improve on that. So just keep doing it. Now, what the CRM can help you do is to be able to keep doing that same process. And we go back to what everyone had. You asked me very early on, which is, what are the biggest challenges? Finding deals over and over again, finding money over and over again. And ideally, if you have now to these 2 pipelines, and then you're sitting in the middle, then you can connect the 2 together. So that's really where the system really comes into it. Because here's a question back maybe to the community. If you didn't have that system, and you go back to the picture that maybe Steve painted, that Mr. Messy picture, how can you refine that? Because it's scattered everywhere. How are you holding all of that? Are you able to repeat that over and over again? So my suggestion would be is, if at this stage you don't have any distractions, you're all in lockdown at this very unique time at the moment, then this will be a perfect time to systemize, because you don't have those distractions. And often with the people that we chat to at the moment, they are thinking ahead now. They want to get the systems, their foundations in place, so that when lockdown then, reopens, they're going to be, first off the block, speed of a puma, straight onto it. But they've now used that time wisely to get their systems in place. So hopefully that makes sense, Steve.
Yeah, sorry if I was slightly distracted. I was just going through the questions that people, if anyone asked any questions while you were talking, I just sat on my microphone. So I might pull myself off the chair in a minute. What else was I going to ask you? So I'll tell you what, before I do, I'm just going to answer this question that Val asked. So this was in my little side rant about Google versus Microsoft in favor of Google Suite or G Suite, as Google is easier. Or yes, if you want a simple, straightforward answer. Microsoft doesn't work. It's not that you can do more in Microsoft, to be honest. The granular itself very well to large organizations. So you're talking hundreds, especially probably if you're asking that question yourself. For most owners, it's all about you. It doesn't matter if it's a CRM, and I've just my CRM choices. See the point from personal experience of what Stephen's talking about. So you look for anywhere for you, and ideally, the company should have brilliant so you don't need information and then digested and then implemented. Do people? And I forgot to mention before, how is software having huge no, it wasn't really having any problem. And when you move to that, good. And then went to HubSpot. Now we need. So after a few years, we're going basic all the way around efficient marketing, not really just big. Down pretty, and these live videos like this. Value a CRM. You do that. In the business, I think that if I just go software, for example, just business,
Summarize around I think that then
exactly.